So what we're going to do is we're going to each individual person going to tell our story, and we're going to tell it from just our experience. There's no time limit.
You can put
Take your
camera
time.
there.
I'm good.
And just, I'd like to know your story, where it came from, what happened, maybe, even back into childhood, it's kind of trying to show a cycle, and what you experienced, and then go into the relationship or whatever it may be, and then how you got out of it, and what are you doing now to help yourself, because in truth, we all struggle daily. My whole life is about helping women and helping people heal, but I still have triggers that trigger me, and so it's important to even if you're having a struggle today, maybe you're having an issue, that's okay to voice that. That way we can maybe give you some extra insight in what you can do with that. And that's what we're here for, is women connected to women, giving each other strength, because we are a lot more powerful in numbers than we are alone, and we are a lot more powerful when we are vocal. And to me, that's what an abuser, where they get their power from, is by us being silent. And so it's so important to find our voice, and I think it's important that we give other women a voice that feel like they don't have one right now. And so that's what we're here for. And you just tell your story, and don't be afraid to cry, and just be vulnerable, because that's what we need. Okay, so I'll let Heather do her spew.
Hi, I'm Heather from the Survivor Girl podcast. I have that show to help inspire and to bring on other women. I have a co-host named Becky who is here today. We are just trying to branch out to help other people to be able to have their voice and tell their story. And I'm here to support the women that are here today to tell their stories as well. So.
I am Roxanne, and I am a survivor of child sexual abuse and domestic violence. And my story started when I was 4, and I was abused by 3 family members. I was abused from the time I was 4, sexually abused from the time I was 4 till I was 12. And it's very in-depth and complicated. I had a very large family. I'm the youngest of 9 children. My mom actually knew about it and had me keep it a secret. So it didn't come out until later on in life, but it caused a lot of damage. The abusers were actually interviewed by the police when I did go as an adult and tell my story to the state police. They confessed, but the statute of limitations had run out. I did not go by the time they had made the new law in Michigan, so it was not retroactive in my case. So even though there was confessions that the one abuser was a minimum of 100 times, which over the time period was at least once every 2 weeks, from the time I was 4 till I was 12, he was very aggressive. And the other 2 abusers were less aggressive, but still just as involved. And it was a very long period of abuse. It caused complex PTSD, severe relationship issues with friends, family, even with my father, who I adored and loved completely. But any relationship with a man, it caused a lot of different issues with myself, how I saw my body, how I saw my sexuality, my self-confidence, who I believed I was. For many years, I really grieved the person that I thought I was going to be, because she didn't exist anymore. She just did not exist. And as hard as I tried to continue to be who I thought I could be, I could not do it. But as fate would have it, I can't say that that's the end of my story, because it's not. I can sit here today at 41 and say that after years and years of sharing and telling my story and working with organizations to share it and to talk to other women and other survivors and um, just other people in general, even if they've never experienced it, just to make them aware that I don't cry anymore about it like that. I am healed. Not that there's anything wrong with crying, but when I do cry, they're tears of healing. And I feel really good about sharing my story where I used to be embarrassed. My story came to light when at 18, the abuser tried to rape me in my own home. And my then boyfriend, who became my husband, came home after he attempted to rape me. And I was disheveled and clothes askewed. And thank goodness he wasn't able to do that. I don't know that I would have made it through that again. I just don't think as an adult I could have handled it one more time. Just one more time would have probably been it for me. I decided to tell my husband then that I had been abused, who the abusers were, but I couldn't gather the courage to tell him everything. I couldn't gather the courage to admit it to myself. It was so vast and somewhat violent that it was just more than I could even grasp in the moment. I did share that with my mother, who I thought would support me. She did not. She did not. Which led me later to find out that she already knew and had known for quite some time and allowed it to go on. So I sort of felt at that point in life like the sacrificial lamb. She sacrificed me, in my opinion, at that time to cover up what was going on in the family. And it was very difficult. It was very challenging. I spent years of my life being suicidal. I spent years of my life feeling dirty, feeling like a sex object, feeling like that's all that I was good for. Being hypersensitive, being hypersexual, being overstimulated, and just suffering from a lot of symptoms from the PTSD. I kept it inside because I didn't want anybody to judge me. And I thought, ew, gross, like yuck. Not only was I abused sexually, but I was abused by 3 family members, like close relatives. Like, how gross is that? It took me years to come to the realization that it's not gross. I wasn't gross. They were the gross ones. I never felt like it was my fault. But I always wondered why I didn't speak up sooner. And then I also came to the understanding that I couldn't. I was 4. I had been conditioned to be quiet and to take it and to think that it was the norm. It led to serious relationship problems with friendships. I chose boyfriends that were abusive. I was at times promiscuous because I was acting out my abuse. I was the abuser. I was in control. I was going to do what I wanted to do, and that was my way of controlling my situation when I had no control over it previously. So moving forward, years and years of talking to other people and just soul searching and going to therapy and group sessions and seeing doctor after doctor and attempted suicide after attempted suicide and hospital stay after hospital stay, which a lot of people would be embarrassed about, but I'm not. I would not be who I am sitting here today, and I am super happy with who I am today. I love myself. I'm very pleased as punch to be here. I'm pleased as punch to be me. Nobody wants that to happen to them. But if it had to happen, if it was going to happen, the best outcome that could happen did. And I'm grateful for that. I can sit here and talk to you about this and not quiver with my voice and not be afraid that you're going to judge me and not be afraid that she's going to think I'm dirty or that I'm slutty or that I did something to deserve it or that I'm a horrible person in any way, shape, or form, because I have nothing to give but love, and I am just super grateful. It took me years to understand what that word meant. And through being a survivor and sharing my story and listening to so many courageous people, not just women, but a lot of women, mostly women, I feel like I'm not alone. I feel like I am part of something bigger than myself. And if anything can come out of it, then the best thing is that if I can share what happened to me and it makes one person aware, even if they didn't experience it, if it just makes them aware of what could happen and it changes the trajectory of what might happen to their life, and I did my job. You know, I took that wrong or that bad thing and I made it good. And that's enough for me. I mean, it really is.
Absolutely.
It really is. So,
If you could give somebody advice that is going through it right now, what would you tell them?
I would tell them that they don't have to be ashamed. That the more they talk about it, if they can find even one trusted person, I don't care if it's a therapist, a friend, a parent, who it is, you have to be that vulnerable. You really do. You have to be that vulnerable. Because just because I didn't sit here and tell you the horrific details of the abuse, I think by extending the age time and the amount of times that one abuser recalls it happening gives you a frame of reference of just how horrific it was. So I had to at some point be vulnerable enough to share those details with somebody.
And that's courageous in its own.
It was physically
Courageous.
sickening. I mean, I used to get physically ill from sharing it. But now I don't have to share that part anymore because
Right.
I feel like I've got to a point where I'm healed enough that I can look at you ladies and I have a smile on my face. It's not because I'm happy I was abused. It's
Right.
because I'm in such a good place in life. I couldn't have said that 20 years ago. I couldn't have said it 5 years ago. But I can say it today. And I love that. I just love that. So that's my advice. Don't keep it inside. It's so lonely as it is. This world is already such a lonely place. Don't keep such a horrible and such a huge burden that you don't have to bear alone. You just don't. There is somebody else who understands.
Yeah.
Look at us.
Yeah.
Do you not understand? You do.
Absolutely.
I can tell the way you're
Absolutely.
listening that you get it.
Yeah.
And whether you've experienced it or not, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You understood. And
Yeah.
I just think that that's huge.
And that's what part of this is for today, to be able to do that. So
That's my advice.
thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, I don't have to tell my story now then. She just told every detail, except there was a couple things that didn't happen, but yeah.
Well, aside from the relationships and the way that it affected me later, I mean, that really, it did. I went into relationships with men where I sought attention and there was domestic violence, and and it all is a cycle. It is a cycle of abuse. I believed I deserved it.
Yeah.
And I wasn't abused by my father. My father was a wonderful man. He was my hero. That's why I never told him.
Right.
I didn't want to break his heart. Now, that may sound silly, but to me, that's the most unconditional love I could have ever given that man.
Right. Absolutely.
I
think it becomes the norm.
It did become the norm.
It's the norm.
It really did. And I sought out men in my life, even at a young age, that were so toxic. So toxic. Unhealthy. And I thought it was the norm. I thought it was fine. And I would fix it with sex.
Yeah.
Because guess what? That's how I knew that, in my opinion, or in my...
That's how you get love.
That's how I got love.
You gotta have sex to have love.
And I never associated, well, and in a way, I kind of didn't associate sex with love because there was no intimacy.
Right, yeah.
There was no intimacy there. It just didn't happen because sex was a physical act to me.
Yeah.
And in my opinion and my perception, men received sex and then that made them feel good and happy and they would just behave.
Yeah.
It was a way to modify their behavior.
Yeah. Yep.
And so that's how I would behave myself. And it really did become almost an addiction because that's how I would fix things.
Yep.
Oh, okay, well you're mad? Oh, okay, well if I just give in this way or if I do that or, and that sounds so silly probably to people who don't understand this.
It makes a lot of sense to, I think, everybody sitting here today and those that have gone through it.
I figured it would. Yeah, absolutely. So, definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you, Roxanne.
Let's start over here, ladies.
Hi, my name is Nicole. The abuse started when I was young. I don't remember what age, but I was chatting with my sibling one day, and all of a sudden, all these memories came back. I had a memory block. And we started discussing what was happening and what happened. And I was actually pregnant at the time. And all of a sudden, it shocked me to realize that all of this had happened because I knew it had happened to my sibling. I just didn't think nothing like that could ever happen to me. And I actually spoke to my mom about it, and nothing was done. Nothing progressed in trying to get justice, but I accepted it. It was what it was at the time. I don't have very many memories of that happening when I was a child, but there are a few, and I do remember a lot of times of this particular person who was a family member trying to get me alone. But I always seemed to, I don't know, just fall at the wrong place at the wrong time, I felt like. And that did cause detrimental effects and damage going into my teenage years. I sought out sex probably everywhere I could, and I knew I had an issue, I knew I had a problem, and I turned into an alcoholic at a very young age. No one ever seemed to notice. I think that's what kind of shocked me is you have this young girl who drinks and, is very promiscuous and nobody notices. I did move out when I was 16 because I felt like I wasn't, there was always chaos where I lived. So I moved in with an amazing woman. She helped guide me. I ended up getting a job, buying my own car. Things were going well, but I still didn't get the therapy and the help that I needed because even she didn't know at that time. I lived with her for about 2 years, and then I went into the military. I'd rather not go into everything that happened with that, but there was sexual assault in that situation as well, with someone higher up. So again, I felt like I was stuck because when you're talking about the military. It happens so often. I don't think people realize with both men and women. And I became even more into alcohol because I didn't know how to heal my pain. So that took the pain away for some time, but there was still a void. So I kept doing just damaging things to myself that I just couldn't get help. Got out of the military. I was only in for about a year due to that. And I got out, moved back home, met a guy. We had my daughter. He was in jail. That was a domestic violence situation. When I was pregnant, it got so bad that I had to walk to work 1 mile each way because he just didn't feel like helping. I had to fend for myself. I handed my paycheck over every time. He was a heavy drinker, very toxic relationship. It ended up getting to a point where I thought, I'm going to lose my life. This is going to be it. Luckily, I had a girlfriend who lived with me at the time, and that night, when he had his gun locked and loaded, she called 911, and that's how that was the beginning of the end of that situation. I had my daughter while he was in jail, which was an amazing moment because I could just enjoy her without being watched, without being scolded. And I met a man about 2 months later. 6 months later, we were married. And it was a situation of, it was like a silent agreement where he wanted a wife and I wanted a family for my child. And again, I chose a very toxic man to be with, to marry. I was still drinking after I gave birth to her, and he was an alcoholic as well. And there was a lot of verbal abuse, a lot of name calling, a lot of just degrading. We ended up getting divorced 9 months later, found out I was pregnant with my other child, got married again, and then 9 months later we were divorced again. I moved back out to a town where I'm from, and I thought, this is it. I'm going to start over. I'm going to start from scratch. And I was wrong. I had a girlfriend who wanted to have me meet one of her friends, and we hit it off. And just as it was good, it turned bad that quickly. I fell in love almost straight away, and I didn't realize the narcissistic tendencies or manipulation until it was too late. I moved in about 3 months after, and the name calling was already started, the degrading, but he would always do it behind closed doors. And we were out in public. It was like, who is this? This is what I signed up for. It was never really truly a relationship. We were always on and off, and in one of our off moments, which was about 4 months, I had started seeing a guy who I went to school with. I went to school with his sisters, actually, and it was a great friendship. It was more of a summer fling, because I did tell him, I said, I'm toxic, I'm damaging, and you deserve better than that. And when that ended, of course, I crawled back to my ex. And it was just that same old toxic cycle. 2 days before my birthday, that next year, I decided I deserved better, and I did deserve the good guy, even though I still didn't take the proper steps of healing and being around a good support group. The day I decided that I deserved better, and I deserved the good guy, he passed away that day. I got right back into the alcohol, right back into pill popping, because I did not know how to live without him. I also called my ex and said it should have been you. It was about a month later, my ex told me, he says, you need to go kill yourself so this world can be a better place. And I tried. I took 7 different prescription medications. And I knew that I was going because I was coming in and out. And then all of a sudden, it was like a light came on, this clarity. And I heard a voice and said, it's not your time. And I'm like, well, I got sick. And the most heartbreaking part of that situation is my daughter came home while I was getting sick, and I said I had the flu, and I had to watch her take care of me. And that was the moment that I thought, this has to stop. You almost lost your life, and your child had to take care of you. And that was a real downfall for me. I am not fully healed. I may not be fully healed, but I have come so far to where I was at. I have met some great women. I have been in and out of therapy. I didn't find that it particularly helped me. I'm not saying it doesn't help anyone. It's just I found better ways, and that was I had to seclude myself from a lot of people. I had to get the negativity out. I had to get those who did not benefit me out. It was my time to heal. And, there was a lot of soul searching in what I wanted in life in general. And what was just going to make me happy, and what was going to make me happy was to not be miserable. And through all of that, 3-4 years later, I'm still not 100% healed. There are a lot of scars. But I go to work and I feel so blessed. I see the look on my children's faces and I think, you are the reason why I'm still here. I have always wanted to be a mother, and I look at my daughter and think that there is still some guilt because I think I was going to take my own life for some guy who never deserved me, and you almost were to live in this world without a mom. I felt very selfish. And I can sit here today and tell you my story and say I survived. I feel like the 7th circle of hell, and I've danced with the devil himself, but I'm okay. I still have triggers. I still have nightmares about horrific things, but I'm okay. I can hug my kids at night and think, nothing gets better than this. Nothing. I have a good group of friends. It may not be big, but there's a few, and they're there whenever I need them, just like I'm there for them. And I feel so much stronger. I can breathe. There's not this heavy weight on my shoulders where I'm looking over my shoulder thinking, what am I, even though I'm not with him, there were still times not so long ago and I'm thinking, would he approve of this? And I'm like, what is this? I'm not truly living. And what am I showing my kids? I'm happy to be alive. I'm so proud to wear this shirt. I'm so happy to hear your guys' stories. And I'm just healing. Every day I'm healing. And I get to go to work. And I get to come home and I get to support my kids. That's all. I'm happy.
You're very courageous. Very courageous. Can I hug you?
Oh, yes. Of course.
I feel connected. Oh,
Thank you.
no, thank you for sharing. That means
You're
a lot. It really does. It means a lot to hear somebody else and to just, it means a lot. It really does.
Nicole, how old are you?
I'm 32.
And what would you give another girl advice if she came to you at a similar situation, what would you tell her?
The best thing I've ever heard is how a person treats you is not a reflection of yourself but of them. So if a person is treating you bad and they're degrading you, it's because they're miserable. That has nothing to do with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, my name is Becky, and I'm co-host of Survivor Girl podcast. I've told my story once, and each time I tell it, I heal a little bit more. I was 13 years old, and I was in love for the first time. And when you're in love, you think you know everything, but you really don't. At that age, you're going through puberty, so your hormones are all over the place. And I truly thought that I was in love with this guy, but he kept wanting me to do things that I wasn't quite comfortable doing. Having an open relationship with my parents, we talked a lot, we talked about sex, and my mother always told me she didn't want me to turn out like her because in her terms, she was a floozy. She would sleep with anybody who was willing to sleep with her because her self-esteem was so low, and I didn't want that to be me. I wanted to save myself for marriage. Unfortunately, when I turned 14, I could no longer withstand saying no, and the boyfriend that I had decided it was time that I give him the goods. And when you're in that situation, your body betrays you because it feels good at the time, even though it's something that you don't want. And it happened quite often for the next several months. When he finally decided he was done, he broke up with me, and I didn't realize that he was protecting me from all of the bullying that could have been happening because I was a 14-year-old with a woman's body, so I was very voluptuous and curvy, and everyone decided that was the time that they took in my weakness to pick on me because of the size of my breasts. Every time I'd walk into a classroom, they would moo, and it got to be too much. I decided I was going to end it. The only way out was suicide. I sat down one morning, woke up before anybody in the house, wrote a letter to my parents, and headed out the door, never to walk into the door again. That was my plan. I went to the place where I was planning on killing myself. I sat down, and for some strange reason, I hesitated. And I can remember sitting in class, my mom calling and saying, asking if I was there, and when they said yes, I was sent down to the office, and that's when counseling started. But because of that, I don't trust guys. I can't have a relationship because I don't trust them that they aren't going to use me just for my body again. So I've been in relationships, and it always comes down to having sex, and when it comes down to that, I head for the hills because I can't even be intimate with them. And that's it. That's where I sit. 42 years, and I can't be intimate with a guy because I can't trust him.
But you're telling your story,
But I'm telling my story.
and every time you do,
I heal.
you heal. And one day, you're going to find someone that is going to love you for you, no matter what.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What would you say, because you were young, teenage years, and we see a lot of that happening
Yeah.
to these young girls, and no one, like with you, why didn't somebody notice that type of scenario? And so what would you say to a 14-year-old girl who's going through this, and what would you say to a parent of a 14-year-old girl?
To the 14-year-old girl, I would say no means no. And if they aren't going to take the no for an answer, go and tell somebody you trust. Because they're not going to stop with just the no. They will keep on. So get out of the situation. And to the parents, have an open and honest communication with your children. Tell them what it's like. Tell them what you experienced. It's the only way that you can stop the cycle from happening.
I think a lot of parents are afraid to tell their children of their stories, are ashamed, or or they don't want them going down the same roads. All these scenarios, and what we really need to be doing is being open and honest with our kids, because 14 years old shouldn't be going through that.
Right.
So
You have the pressure from your friends
Yes.
at school. It's a huge thing where they're like, oh, well, I've already done it. Or even if they haven't.
Or everybody's
everybody's
doing
doing it.
everybody's
you know.
doing it.
Yeah,
or
they need to be enlightened. Like, I know my story's slightly different, but my boys have known, not in details, but
Right.
they've known my story since they were young enough to understand that, no, they're not going to go with a strange group of folks
Right.
who I don't know, the parents or whatever,
Absolutely.
because of this reason.
Yeah.
Because I will never allow that
Yeah.
to happen to them. And if anything were to be odd or off, please don't hesitate to come to me.
Yeah.
Come to me, tell me. I want to know. That's what I'm here for. My job, my number one job is to protect you.
Yeah.
And I wasn't
Absolutely.
heard. I
Right.
wasn't listened to. And I would never raise my boys or anybody else's children around me if someone said to ever think that they are not valued.
Right.
They're so worth it.
Yep.
I mean, they are
the other
just
thing
so
I would
worth
say
it.
is trust your guts. Trust those gut
Absolutely.
feelings
Yes.
because you have them for a reason.
Yep.
Intuition. If you think something is hinky, something is hinky.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yep. Thank you.
I'm going to tell a story. Everybody's already told it.
No, you can tell your story.
I mean,
We're
seriously.
waiting.
Well, we need to hear your story so I can tell my story.
Well, my story starts when I was 5 years old.
What's your name?
Oh, Terry. And my daddy loved me so much. I was his pride and joy. He had 6 other kids, I think, at the time. And I was the oldest. And I looked like my mom. And I was his pride and joy. And when I was 5 years old, he built me a, what do you call it? Merry-go-round that I'd begged for since I was little. And when I got on it the first time, I fell off and I started crying, of course, because I'm 5 years old. And he pushed me too fast, and I said I'd never get back on it again because I was scared. Well, from that moment on, my father hated me, literally. Wouldn't do anything for me again. Wouldn't hug me. Well, actually, he never did hug me, but wouldn't do anything with me at all. Say he loved me, whether he did or didn't. When I turned about 7, I think, he started molesting me, and I was. Do I have to talk about this?
You don't have to go into detail.
I was he beat my mom, and since I was the oldest, I had to take care of the kids all the time. But it was just once in a while, and it wasn't nothing, no penetration or anything, but it was touching stuff that, you know, even at 7 years old, you know it's not right. But, you know, you love your daddy, and you want to get his love back. So you'll do anything, whatever. Yes, Daddy. Yes, sure, no problem. Well, off and on for a couple years, it went on, and then it started getting worse. He used to beat my mom a lot, and he'd rape her. And my mom was mentally challenged. So by this time, she had 7 or 8 kids. I can't remember how many, but she had a lot of kids. And so he wanted sex all the time. And because I looked like her, and I guess I did, I was his surrogate wife, the surrogate mother, and I, of course, had to take care of all the kids and blah, 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 because my mom really wasn't capable. I mean, she had her moments, but not very. Well, anyways, he kept doing it till I was about 10, and then I ran away. And I ran away. And I ran away. And every time I got caught, the courts sent me back home. Need to be with your dad and your mom, which she wasn't there half the time, but I had to be with her or with him. And I told my story to the judge. And my dad said that I was making up stories. So they sent me home. So I went home and started all over again. Only at this time it was getting worse and worse. To where I took a frying pan one time and hit him over the head with it. And I wanted him to die, but he lived. So then I went, my mom left when I was 12. She left all 6 of us behind. Or 8 of us, I mean. There was 8 of us. Left all of us behind. And just left. Never came back. Used to drive by the house all the time and see it, and go to work. Never stopped to see if we were okay. Didn't care. I thought she didn't care. I didn't know that how bad she was, mentally challenge-wise. I didn't know that. After so many years of sitting on the freeway waiting for her to go by, just so she would stop. I even run out in front of her car a couple times, trying to get her to stop, and she'd just go around and keep going. I thought, wow, I love you too. But before she left, I went to her, and I told her, I was 10 years old, I remember telling her, Mom, Dad's doing this and this and this. And she told me to shut up, keep my mouth shut, and don't tell nobody. Because if I tell anybody, she will get in trouble. And I'm like, well, what about me? I'm being hurt here. And she was too. She was. So, anyways, that's why then 2 years later she left. But I had already run away so many times. I'd lived on the street so long, for so long. And it got to be pretty normal for me. And that went on for years, till I turned 18. I was on the streets off and on for years. I was in juvenile a lot and foster homes, and then you go to the foster home and they rape you too, so you just keep going. Like you say, it's normal. And so then years go by. Well, I turn 18, or I'm almost 18, and the judge, I'm in trouble again, and I'm in front of the judge, and the judge says he was going to put me in jail. And I said, well, I guess that's probably better for me than where I'm going to go anyways. And he didn't want to put me in jail, even though I'd been in his courthouse many, many, many times. He finally just said, we could fix this if you just get married. I said, I don't want to get married. I said, I don't want to ever get married to anybody, anybody. And then I had a friend who said he would marry me. And the judge says, okay, I'll marry you. So they married me right there in the court. And I'm like, I don't want to get married. But I thought, well, I didn't want to go to jail either, so I married him. He was the nicest boy in the world. But he just I wasn't good enough for him. So anyways, I left him, but before I left him, I met her dad. And when I met her dad, he was decent for a while. And then he became abusive too. Because he was a druggie and an alcoholic. And I was too. So it wasn't just him. But we dated for a while, and I lived with his parents off and on and stuff like that. And he would beat me, and his mom would stick up for him and say he was, and you would have thought that would have been the say no to, leave, don't stay. But I married him. This time I married him because I was in love with him so much. And he joined the Navy, and then he went to sea, or went to boot camp, and then after he come back, then we moved to San Diego, California, which I found out later, he chose that place. because it was so far away from home, and I had nobody. But to kind of backtrack a little bit, once I finally left home at 12, all my sisters disappeared too. They all just got taken away, and they ran away, or they went to homes, or they went, all abusive. And we didn't see each other for years, and I mean many, many years. And then, but to get back to San Diego, he took me to San Diego because San Diego was away from my family, my friends, what I had, because I learned at an early age, don't trust anybody either, at all, nobody. And then I got pregnant. Well, I got pregnant with her almost immediately after we got married, and I didn't want a baby. I did not
you got
want
me.
a baby. But once I was carrying her, I wanted her, and then I was going to fight tooth and nail to keep her no matter what, even though he was feeding me then too. But I wasn't going to let anything happen to her. I mean, I even quit smoking, drinking, drugging, all for you. Started right back up. But, and then her father, we were married 2 years, and he abused me so badly that he choked me and left me for dead. But before he did that, she was 9 months old, and he threw her across the room. I'm surprised she didn't have brain damage, because she hit the wall, but I guess she hit her back instead of her neck, or her head. But he didn't care. He didn't care. He just laughed. And that's when I made up my mind that I was leaving him, and I told him that. And he said that I could never find anybody better than him, and that I was stupid, and all the things that my dad used to say to me. And but I had made up my mind I was going to leave no matter what. I didn't care how I was going to do it, but I was going to do it. So I waited for him to leave to when he went to service. I mean, that was the plan. But then when he choked me and left me for dead and locked the door. Now, I don't know if anybody knows about Navy housing, but they're like steel doors. You can't break them down. You have to use a torch if you don't have a lock, you have to use a torch to get them all open. So he locked it and left me there, thinking I was dead. She was just a little thing, and she crawled over to me, and she was crying. I remember hearing her cry, a baby crying, but I couldn't put the dots together. And my neighbor come over, her and her husband, and because they saw him leave, how he left, and they came over and they were beating on the door. They tried everything they could to get in, and finally they called somebody that had a torch, and they opened the door and found me, and then took me to the hospital, took care of her. And then they asked me, "Are you going to leave him now?" Because I had said I was going to leave 100 times before. And I said, "Yeah, I'm leaving." So I called my sister in Michigan, and she said I could come stay with her, and she just had twins. And so she was having problems with her husband. Well, I took the baby, and we left, and I had to leave my dog behind. And if anybody knows me, they know that leaving my dog behind was almost as bad as leaving my kid behind. And he ended up letting the dog starve to death, and that hurt really bad. But anyways, I went to Michigan with her, and trying to get as far away as I could, because I was scared to death that he was going to find us, because I kept looking everywhere. He was coming. I knew he was coming. I knew he was coming. I knew he was coming. And he never did. But I stayed with my sister for a little while, and then my brother-in-law tried to molest me. Because back then I had long hair down to back of my, down here, and he was brushing my hair. "Oh, here, let me brush your hair for you." And he was brushing it, and then he was fondling and doing his thing. And so I screamed at him and told him to leave me alone. And my sister came down, and she kicked me out. Said I was flirting with her husband. So I had to take her, and we left. And so then I had to go to court for divorce. And the judge asked me over and over and over. There was a woman, and she asked me over and over and over, was I sure that I wanted the divorce, and was I sure that I didn't want nothing? And I said the only thing I wanted was her. That I wanted nothing that he had, because it meant nothing to me. I said I want my dog back, but she's dead. So the judge kept asking me, and I said, why are you asking me? I'm telling you what I want. And she said, because you're young. If you let everything go now, because you're entitled to everything, but if you let it all go now, you're going to struggle. You're really going to struggle to try to raise your child on your own. And I said, I don't care. I can do it. I know I can. And she looked me in the eye and she says, I know you can. She says, I have confidence in you. I believe you can do it. I didn't know how I was going to do it either, because my sister wasn't speaking to me. And my other sisters, I didn't know where anybody was still. So we left and we got social services for a little bit. And I just found jobs. I had 3 or 4 jobs at a time. And trying to take care of her, it was really hard. It was really hard. But I wasn't going to let her go. And I was still worried about her father coming back, because he would threaten. He would call and he would threaten and say, I'm coming back, I'm going to take that brat away from you. But he wouldn't acknowledge that she was his. Never did he acknowledge it when she was little. And his second wife told him that it was his child and he needed to step up and be a man and support her. But he never listened to her either. So then years go by and she gets older. I start doing dating. And I dated many men, and many men were many bad ones. They were so mean, so ugly. And I just recently found out that she was molested by one of them. And I didn't know that. And that really hurts, because I always told her that if any man ever touched you, or anybody ever touched you in any way, shape, or form, please don't come to me, because I will take care of it. But she never did. So I just assumed it was okay, because I was driving truck and I was gone a lot, so I had to leave her behind. I took her for a while, but then it got to be too hard and she needed to be in school, so I left her with friends that I thought were friends. And then I don't know when that happened with her and him, but statutory rape or whatever is over now. But if I saw him again, I don't know what I would do. But so then I dated for a while, many guys, and they were all bad. Like to say toxic, very toxic. And I think they were all just like my dad, every last one of them. They called me stupid names. As long as I was doing what they wanted me to do, I was fine. But the minute I started stepping up for myself, or standing up for myself, or getting a backbone for myself, oh yeah, push you back in the ground. We don't want to hear that. We're not going to let you say that. And then whap, whap, bang, bang, boom, boom, whatever. So then I met my second daughter's father as the years go by. And
I was 13.
13. And of course, you know how stepkids are with their stepfathers. They hate each other. And they were so much alike. And they still are. It's not even funny. But she's more mature than he is now. But they, we're divorced now, but he was, we got married. Okay, the story is we got married. We were dating. Okay, I had moved back to Michigan. I'd gotten in a truck accident, moved back to Michigan because I couldn't drive. I'd hurt my back and stuff, and I couldn't drive, so I lived with my dad. Best place to go with your child, daughter child. So I told my dad back then, I said, if you touch my daughter while I'm out looking for a job, I'll kill you. And I mean that. And he says, I don't know why you said that. He says, I would never touch your daughter.
He never hugged me, never even went near me.
I'm glad, because
Never.
I would have. But he denied it completely. Told me I was stupid and crazy. All the nice words that like to haunt you forever. And so I know he never touched her then, ever. And I know it's because I threatened him. And I meant it. And he could see it. He knew I meant it. I said I couldn't protect myself, and nobody would protect me, but I'm protecting her. And if I have to leave her here, even though I didn't want to, you better not touch her. And so he never did, but I would go out and look for a job and stuff. And I went, my dad, believe it or not, talked me into going to
Singles bar.
singles bar one night with him, which was really hard to do because just being in the same vehicle with him, being in the same house with him was just creepy. I mean, just, ugh.
It was the same house she grew up in.
Yeah, same house all this went on in. So it was really hard to go home for that, if you want to call that home. But it was the only place I had to go, and I had to think of her. And I didn't have a job, and I had no money, so I had to do something. So she, I went to the dance, and I met this guy, and I dated him for a little while, and we moved in together because I had to get out of my dad's house. I just had to get out of there. I don't care where I had to go, but I had to get out of there. I just couldn't take it no more because every time I went there, it was just too much dirt, too much filth, too much creepy skin, creepy everything. And my dad tried to act like nothing happened ever and never acknowledging any of it. And even if I tried to talk to him about it, he just called me a liar. So he says, if it happened, then how come nobody stepped up to help you? I said, well, one time my uncle did. He beat the tar out of him, but that was the only time he ever did it. He never did it again. He just, I guess he thought if he did it once, it would never happen again. But anyways, I dated this guy, moved into his house, and she went with me, of course. Well, after a while, we were living together, and he all of a sudden got a, conscious thought or something about, well, I don't want to sleep with you because your daughter's here. And I thought at the time, well, that's nice, I mean, he cares enough about my daughter to want to not sleep with her and, have her walk in the bedroom and see us or whatever. We're not married. So he asked me to marry him. I told him no. And he says, well, then you have to move out. I said, fine. I didn't know where I was going to go. And he asked me to stay, and I said, well, I'll stay for a little while, but you sleep there, I'll sleep here, we just won't sleep together. And we didn't have sex during that whole time. He didn't want sex. He was a womanizer, and he had had so much sex that he didn't want to have sex anymore. And I thought, hallelujah, I'm happy now. I can eat, I can breathe, and I can live with somebody that doesn't want to have sex. This is nice, I like this. So that lasted about a year. We got married, and we finally got married, and he asked me to marry him, and I said, well, I don't know, and he says, let me tell you why we should get married. Well, I didn't have a job, I didn't have a place to live, I was going to have to move out. He wanted a wife, but he didn't want a sex wife. He wanted just a wife, someone to help clean his house, take care of his, he didn't want to have kids. That's all he wanted. I thought, I said, and I don't have to go to work? He says, nope, you can stay at home. I can do this. So I said, sure, but no sex, right? And he said, yep. So it was fine for a while. And then, I don't know, probably a year later, he decided, well, it's time to have sex. And his sex was not good sex. His sex was porno sex, or whatever you want to call it, sex. And rough sex, and other kinds of sex. Go to sleep, and I'll rape you in the middle of the night, sleep sex, those kind of things. And I didn't know it till later, but when I went to therapy, it came back or whatever, but he'd been doing it for a while. He'd been drugging me, and while I'd be sleeping, he would have sex with me, and then I'd get up in the morning and I'd be all wet, and I'd go, what's wrong with me? I must have had an accident, or, and of course it was my mind thinking it was my fault that I did something, that I did it. It was my body that did it. And then we were married for 25 years. The first 5 years was good, sort of. This is after we moved into where I live now. We lived there. My second daughter was born, and she was 5 years old when he changed. That's when he really started doing things that were so unbelievable, and he just turned into a monster. I mean, just literally a monster. He never hit me. Never hit me once.
And I
Verbally.
was already gone.
Yeah,
I
she had
left.
left at 15. But he is verbal. I've never heard anybody be so mean in my whole life. Verbally. I mean, worse than my dad, if that could be possible. I mean, he had so much hatred in him. He hated me. He hated me so much. And I thought it was because maybe I reminded him of his mother or his sister or because he didn't have a good relationship with them. But I found out later that it wasn't nothing to do with them because he actually respected me, if you can understand that, more so than he ever did his mom and sister, because they were not good mother and sister. And he knew I was a good mother. And he respected me for that part. Not as a wife, but as a mother. And he thanked me later, down the road after we got divorced, for taking care of his daughter and being a stand-up mother and not letting him do things that he wanted to do at times. Not physically or anything, but just verbally. And so I stayed with him for 20 more years after that. And
Came back
she came back in the picture.
when Elijah was 3, and I wasn't allowed over at the house.
Not at all. I
He
mean,
wouldn't let me.
I
He
couldn't
didn't
let my
like me.
grandkids come over. I couldn't let her come over.
Nope.
He was so. I mean, we had
Because
to
I
sneak
hated
him
him.
over.
I knew something was wrong.
But it wasn't even that. He just hated her.
Yeah, for
I
no
mean,
reason.
From the time she was into the picture, it was like he hated her. And
Yeah.
and then when she had the kids, even Elijah. Now Elijah, he liked him at the beginning when he was a little guy, but then I don't know. He stopped liking Elijah too, but he wouldn't let me have Elijah or Cordelia
No,
come over.
you
They
weren't
couldn't
allowed.
come to my house, and we would fight so much. I'd say, "But this is my house too." I said, "I've been married to you for this many years," and I said, "And this is my daughter and her children. These are my grandchildren." I said, "And they can be yours if you want them to be." I said, "But you won't let me have them over here? That's wrong. It's just cruel." And there was lots of things that he did that was so cruel. She was actually better off not coming over. But
He wrote a letter on behalf of my son's dad for court when I was trying to get custody of my son behind my back, siding with my ex, who was abusive, who he never even met. He wrote a letter on his behalf to get my son taken away from me.
luckily it didn't happen.
No, absolutely
The
not.
judge didn't listen to that, but he was upset because it happened. He was upset that it didn't go his way, because he was very what do you call it, controlling. I mean, I would have rather been beat up. I'd have rather been raped. I'd have rather had anything than the control that he had. And so for 20 years I stayed with him because I had another daughter. I had took her away from her father when she was 2. I didn't want to do that to her her sister. I didn't want to do that to her. I thought it was wrong. I said, I can't take her away from her father. She needs children need a father in the home. I didn't realize that children need fathers, but they don't need them in the home. And they don't need them if they're toxic. And I didn't know this until after we got divorced and everything. My other daughter came to me and told me some horrible things and that she had went through during that 17 years, because she was 17 when we divorced, that he had put her through, and I had put her through without even realizing it. Here, I thought everything was fine between me and her. I thought we were best buds and everything. I mean, we were, more so than me and her, but because of, we had a different lifestyle. But she had gone through pure hell. And one thing I can tell anybody in a relationship, an abusive relationship, if you have children, get the hell out of there right now. Go, run, as far as you can go. Don't stay, because it's not good for the children. It's not good for them at all. It only hurts them. And if you want a role model in their life, a male-wise, find a good one. And bring an uncle or a cousin or whatever, as long as they're healthy and they don't want to hurt your children. Because my family life, on my mom's side, is really sick. But it's child abuse and incest, big time on my mom's side. And then on my dad's side, it's child abuse and incest. So we got a little bit of everything. And my mom slept with all the uncles and everybody and had different kids by different people. And, you know, it's because of that, you know, you just about, and then how I was raised, you think everything is supposed to be that way. I used to look at people's houses and walk by their houses and just stare at them, you know, and just watch the people walk around in the house, you know, through their windows and stuff, and how loving they were and how this and how that, and wish so bad that I could move in with them. You know, I could be their maid. I don't care, just so that I could be around people like that, you know, because I knew there was good people out there. There had to be, but I couldn't trust anybody. And even today, like she said, there's no sex in my life, and it's because I chose it. And I love my life, don't get me wrong. I love my life now. My life is wonderful, but I'm single, and I don't want to change that. I don't. And you know, I believe in God, and if God brought me a man, it would only be somebody He sent, because there is nobody out there that I'm looking for. And people can't understand why I don't date, and it's like, I've had enough. I've had enough. I was married 3 times, and the first one was the younger guy, the one that the judge made us marry. I should have stayed with him, but he's gone now. And then her father, and he was a very bad man, and to me. And then this one, and he was the longest one, 25 years, and I am so happy the way my life is right now. I love my life, I really do. I have a dog business, a pet sitting business, and I love it.
She
And
loves dogs more than she likes people.
yeah, I do. not my children. My other daughter and I were talking about this the other day too, because my sister, not accused me, but she said, well, I love my family more than I do my dog, and so she's getting rid of her dog, and I'm like, okay. So she's saying it to me because...
There's no difference.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay,
It's my kids.
dogs are my favorite kind
Yeah,
of people.
they're my
too.
family.
Our family.
They need you.
Yes.
I feel
Therapy.
God puts them into my life. I don't go get them. He brings them to me.
Yeah.
And I just take care of them and love them.
And
I
And
have
what a
to-
great form of unconditional love they are.
Yeah.
Oh, the best.
I want to say that I think that you're probably one of the strongest women I've ever known. Because,
She only knew.
well, I mean,
She doesn't live with me, so she doesn't know.
you could have given me up.
No.
You could have left me behind.
Even though at the very beginning when I first got pregnant I didn't want you. Nope.
And
Once
you
you
know,
were inside, you were mine.
and when I tell my story, I've never, because people have asked, I've never held anything ill towards you when it come to what happened to me as a child. I never blamed you, never any of that. And I have reasons why
Huh.
I didn't
You should have heard
vocal.
her say some things to me when she was a kid.
When I was a teenager, yes.
No.
And then you grow up and you realize that no matter what, I'm responsible for me. And that I know, having kids, I mean, having a 20-year-old, having a 14-year-old, having children, now, especially as a mother, knowing that you do the best you can with what you got and what you come from. And so I understand that. But I also know that you taught me never to lie, never, that I had natural beauty. And, you know, you taught me some strong foundations that maybe, you know, you don't realize. But I also think that you're very strong because of what happened with my grandfather when he passed away. Because you were there at his deathbed, holding his hand,
'Cause I
praying with
forgave
him.
him.
'Cause
I
she
forgave him.
forgave him.
At the last 5 years of his life, he had cancer. I didn't know he had cancer, but he was dying, and I could tell it just by looking at him because he was shrinking. But he
and he became
I
different
forgave
too.
him. Yeah, he did.
He
He
became-
hugged me. He
towards the
hugged me,
end.
really hugged me once before he died. It was so cool. He came to my house, him and my brother. My brother was had
Schizophrenia.
he was schizophrenia. There's a lot of labels, as they say, but I think he was just a sweetheart. But anyways, he died just shortly before my dad did. But him and my brother came to my house one time. It was around Christmas, I think, and it used to be really hard for him to come to my house. I couldn't. My brother, yes. My dad, no. But this time it was okay. I felt fine with it, because I had made up my mind that I was going to forgive him. Because, not for him so much, but for me. Because all those years, I was so angry and so hurt and so, even though nobody knew it because I hid it well, but inside my body knew it. I was hurting. I was physically sick all the time. And I knew that I had to forgive him, because if I didn't, I would never be able to go on. I was going to get sicker. My internal organs were going to kill me. So I finally decided to do it. But I had to really make up my mind to do it, because it was not an easy thing to do. I talked myself out of it 1,000 million times. But finally, when he come over, I told him. He was sitting at the table, and he had come over, and we were talking. Okay, my dog business, I was struggling at the time, and he had come over, and he, God, there's so much I could say. He, my dad used to, if he loaned you money, which I only asked for money once in my whole life from him, because he would, oh God, he was always on you every 5 minutes. When are you going to pay me? When are you going to pay me? When are you going to pay me? So he did that one time, and he kept doing that. So I finally gave him back all his money and told him to shove it up his you know what. And I said, I don't want no part of your money. But I gave it to you. I said, no, you didn't give it to me. There was conditions, and I don't want it. And I said, you don't own me no more. I don't have to deal with you anymore. We're done. And so I gave him back the money. But anyways, later down the road, Christmas time, I decided it was time. It was time. I had to do this. I had to do this for me. So when he came over with my brother was outside walking around and stuff. And my dad was sitting here. I was sitting here. We were sitting across from each other. And the funny part about it is, over here's where my ex-husband used to sit, and he turned into a monster sitting over there. So I kind of expected my dad to do the same thing, but he didn't. And we were talking, and what we were talking about was my plans for my business, how to make it better, and how much it was going to cost me. And my dad was a very smart man, and he knew how to work on stuff like that. And he was telling me his ideas, but he wasn't. I told him right from the get-go, if you say one critical word to me, you're out the door. You don't talk to me. And this is before I could say I was sorry, to forgive him. But he didn't say anything bad. He sat there and he listened to my thing and what I thought about this, and he gave me his suggestions, and they made sense. And so we talked about it, and we talked about how much it would cost to do it. And I said, yeah, well, I guess that's not going to happen. I don't have that kind of money, And I just blew it off, never thought about it again. Well, then that was just before Christmas. And then Christmas came around Christmas time, not Christmas, but shortly around that time. He came over with my brother. My brother's outside. We were talking and more about the plans. And I told him then. I always called him Daddy, I guess because I always wanted a daddy. But I told him I loved him, and I did. I did love him. I really did. And in his mind, it was probably sick. I don't know, but I told him I loved him, and I said, I'm sorry if I did anything wrong or anything to cause you to disrespect me in any way, shape, or form. I said, but I know that I didn't deserve anything you did to me. And I said, and I know you're never going to say you're sorry, and I know you're never going to acknowledge it. I know you deny it. You've got it so buried inside your head that you're just going to deny it. I said, but I know inside there somewhere you know what you did. I said, but we don't have to talk about it. I just want you to know that I forgive you. I thought his mouth was going to fall. I thought he was going to fall off the chair. Because it really did affect him. It shook his world. Because I know inside he knew but he could never say it. But at the same time, when I said, I forgive you for all you've ever done to me, everything, I said, all of it. And I wanted to hug him right then, but I couldn't make myself do that. That was something I just couldn't get up and do. I mean, I kept wanting to, but I just couldn't do it because I just wasn't quite there yet. But when I finally realized that I did forgive him, I thought, I could probably hug him. Sure, I could do that, but not yet. So I sat back down, and then my brother came in, and we were talking again, and I watched my dad, and I thought my dad was just going to, I mean, I don't know what he just got really weak all of a sudden, just started, shaking, and I think he was crying inside. I truly do. I mean, he wasn't going to let me see it, but I think he was crying inside. So then, when my brother came in, they were getting ready to leave, my dad handed me an envelope, told me to put it on the table. He said, don't open it till late, after Christmas. Okay, fine, whatever. And I never paid no attention to it because I wasn't even thinking about it. But he got up, and I was giving my brother a hug. And my brother and we always hugged, and I was saying, I love you, Raleigh, and I hope I see you again, and blah, blah, blah. And my dad says, hey, what about me? And I went, you can have a hug if you want one. I said, you just got to come get it. And he came over, and he gave me the best hug ever. And it was like I was 5 years old all over again, and Daddy was back. And Daddy loved me, even though he never hugged me up to that point. But, I mean, it was like something I wanted all my life, But I felt like I was 5 years old all over again. It was so cool. I almost wanted to go out and get on the merry-go-round. and I even apologized to him for saying I would never get back on it again. I said, Daddy, I've been on one since many, many times. I said, and every time I get on one, I think about you. And I think about how sweet you were that you built that for me. And so then when he was passing, we didn't know he had prostate cancer because he hid that from us. But when he was in the hospice dying on his deathbed, I went up, and of course I was there all that time with him. And I was holding his hand. I mean, we all were. It wasn't just me. But I was holding his hand. And he squeezed for an old man who was dying, had so much strength in his hand. When I finally pried his hand off mine, there was marks there from his hand. He was holding my hand so tight, and he couldn't talk, but his eyes were going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it was like he was trying to say, and I believe this with my heart, that he was saying, I'm sorry. That he knew he was going, and this was it, he was going. And his eyes and he cried, and he said, I'm sorry. In his eyes, he said he was sorry. And I have to believe that, or I would not be able to survive today, because I believe in heaven, and I believe I'm going to see him again. And it'll be all different then. But he said he was sorry with his eyes. And if I read eyes, and if people could read eyes, they would see so much sadness in this world. But he was saying he was sorry, and it was so, it took any anger away. It was all gone. I mean, it was just gone. It was amazing how I stopped hating him. I mean, I'd already forgiven him, but I still had some. There was still some deep in there where I hated him. But it was like I had 1,000 pounds lifted off me. And I felt so rejuvenated. I mean, between me and him, that was the best part of my whole life ever. And so I say one thing to anybody who's been hurt. You have to forgive, because if you don't, you'll never be able to have a normal life, because that anger will eat you. It will kill you. It will literally kill your inside organs, and it will hurt you for the rest of your life. And you'll be angry so long, and it's like, for what? Life is so short that if you're angry, because that person, they're done. They don't care about you. They don't care what they've done to you. They're off in their own little la-la land. You're over here suffering, and you're over here going, hurting and a lot of pain. You're just giving that person power. And I mean, seriously, you're giving him or her power, and they run your life. And the best way to do it is to say, I'm sorry, and mean it. because then you will not know how good it feels until you truly forgive them. You can't do, I mean, you have to really do it. I mean, you have to really feel it inside your heart and know that that's what you want to do. If you can't do it, don't do it until you're ready. But I'm telling you from my own experience, you tell them you're sorry and you mean it. Because I did. I told my dad a couple times, I'm sorry. Or I'm not sorry. I forgave him, I mean. But I didn't really forgive him. You know, there were still pieces there that I couldn't forgive him. Like when my sister was taking care of him during his last days of his life, she had to clean him, physically clean him. And I could not do that. I could not go and help her do that for nothing, because I just couldn't, because it was just couldn't. But once I finally gave him, or I finally, honest to God, in my heart, said, I forgive you. And it came from here. All that was gone. All was gone. All that hate, everything was gone.
And you changed.
Yeah, and I changed.
She was a
I
whole
became
different person.
I became a happy person. I became the person that I should have been all those years. You know, that I wasn't because of my childhood. But I became the person that I am today, and I love who I am today. So it was like, it's only because of that. Forgiveness. I mean, I know you've gone through hell. I know you have. I know you have. All of you. I'm telling you, if you can't forgive that person, right now, that's your between you guys. But one day I pray for all of you that you can forgive that person. I mean, I'm struggling right now. This is something a little different, but my friend got murdered here last year on Easter. And the killer just went to prison. I can't forgive him yet. I can't forgive him yet. But I know that when I do, I'll get that part of my life back too. Because I know I will. But at the moment I can't, because it's too fresh. But I know I can do it down the road. Because if I could do it with my dad, I could do it with anybody. Believe me. And I forgave my husband, my ex-husband, my younger daughter's father, because he was, out of all the relationships, he was the worst. And I'm glad you didn't have to be around for most of that, because he was, even though it was just verbal, but he was the worst. So my advice is forgive. One day, when you're stronger, not strong because you are strong, but when you're stronger, and your heart tells you, listen to it. Forgive them, because all you're doing is giving them power. That's all you're doing. And that is the worst thing you can give that person, is the power to run your life. Because you're better than that. You're better than that. Every one of us. And I know it. I say it to myself every day. Every time I start thinking about something that my ex did or should have done or whatever, I'm not giving him that power.
And how old are you?
63. 64 pretty soon.
64. Okay.
But it took me all these years to do this. So I pray with all my heart that it doesn't take you guys that long, because you're all too young for this. You're too young to suffer this like this. I mean, it's just, it's not a good life. You know, you can pretend and be happy now, because, you know, I know you are. I know you are too. But there's still a lot of hurt there.
Oh, absolutely.
So until you can forgive that person or people,
not for them.
not
for
for
yourself.
them.
Right.
No, not for them. The heck with them. You do it for you.
You just struck a chord with
It
me, 'cause
makes
it's the
you
only thing I have
strong.
never really gotten to.
Yeah. It makes you
know.
stronger.
Yeah, it does.
It makes you, it changes your whole life. It truly
I've
will.
prayed about it for years.
Don't give up.
I won't.
Don't give up
But
praying
I've
for
never
it.
gotten to a point where my heart felt that I could purely and wholeheartedly forgive them. And until that happens, I just continue to pray about it. Because
Just keep
there's
praying.
nothing,
I will pray for you. We will pray for you.
Yeah.
Just don't give up.
I won't. I
Because
won't. And as
One
much
day,
as I
before
feel,
you're
I
63,
feel,
I hope.
as long as it happens before I take my last breath, I'll believe that then that was a life worth living regardless.
Right.
But it's the one thing that I've struggled with so when you talk like this and I hear your story, it resonates with me, and
Good.
it's, and I know that I'm sitting here crying, but I'm crying because it's joyful to hear someone else be able to get to that point.
Yeah.
You know, yes, I'm happy. Yes, I'm glad of all the things that I had to say. Everything I said was true.
Oh yeah.
But the one thing that I would love to be at peace with is to not have that person or people in my life have that piece of control. And I'm not there yet.
Nope.
I'm not, I may be healed,
Right.
but I'm not.
No, they're
healed.
still there.
That's right.
I know.
But
I went through that.
We'll get there. 'Cause
Yeah.
we're warriors.
You
Yeah,
will.
and I believe
You're
that
strong.
100%.
You're
Yes.
strong. Look at where you've come already.
Yeah, and I believe you. I agree.
So you will.
I
You will
believe
get
you.
there, and I
Thank you
believe
so
you'll get there
much.
before you're 63. I do. And you, all of you. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, and she's already healing, thank God. I mean, she doesn't have to wait till she's 63.
I feel blessed.
Well, let's take a break, pause for a minute, and I'll tell my story.
Okay, that sounds good.
All right?
Okay.
I'm watching roosters chase each other.
You know what they're doing, don't you? They're abusing each other.
Oh, no!
Because it's a male and a female trying to
great.
you know
Here we
what?
go.
Turn, am I on?
You are on.
We are on. Okay.
Let me.
Um,
The sun is really.
Can you hand us the Kleenex box?
Yes.
yeah, I'm probably going to be needing it.
Let me get it.
Oh,
You got it.
here, I'm gonna grab one
You better
first.
yeah, why don't you pass them
There we
around?
go.
first?
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
The problem is the sun.
Do I need to move? I can
I
move.
don't know. There's my phone
You want to
again.
sit here?
It's just
Yeah,
kind of a
maybe.
glare.
Here.
Or because you want to be by your mom?
Oh,
or-
it's all right.
Oh, I didn't know because of her story and you know
Well,
what I
just
mean.
come over and sit on her lap. when
Yeah,
you're done.
she's in my lap. Okay.
With the there's my phone again.
I'm sorry.
That's my phone. It's okay.
Okay, here we go. My name's Crystal. I'm 42 years old. I'll be 43 in July. Doesn't feel like it. I still feel like I'm 16 half the time, which is good. It's very interesting that listening to my mom's story about my dad and things like that, because, there's just things like, I've done a lot of studies on how pregnant women, the baby feels what the mother goes through. So my abuse began before I was even born, and I was experiencing that from the get-go. And I always laugh because she tells me I came out feet first, and I'm like,
Naturally. by the
yep,
way.
feet first, born on 4th of July, a week late, and I'm like, I was an independent baby with my feet on the ground running. That's just the way it felt. And I have neck problems and stuff, back issues I never figured out. Maybe it was because of what happened with my dad, who knows. But I know that the dad that she describes, I don't know that dad, because he wasn't like that when I met him, because I honestly didn't know my dad for the first 15 years of my life. There are pictures, I have memories playing with a little baby on the floor, and my memories are very scattered throughout my life. I have bits and pieces that come back. I remember one time going to sleep at 9 and waking up at 12, and just gaps. I have gaps, nightmares, tremendous, huge nightmares of being chased and just of men and things, and not understanding them at that time. But I would have dreams of, of this baby, and I thought it was a dream. Come to find out later, it was a memory of me playing with my little sister, because my mom had taken me to go see my dad when I was 2 or 3, something like that, 3 years old or so, and there's pictures of us. And I remember my sister, because she was a baby, playing with her, but I don't remember my dad, and I have the pictures of me sitting on his lap, and I don't remember him at all. And he never contacted me until we lived at my grandpa's, and he called one time to talk to my mom, and I answered the phone, and I didn't want to talk to him, and so I didn't see him again until I was about 15 years old. But, okay, so the backtrack, when I was 7, my, 7 is my lucky number. It always has been my lucky number, and I can never figure out why always 7. Well, when I was 8, I was raped and molested by my mom's boyfriend that she had at the time.
I don't, like you, have memories of it, per se. I remember being on the bed. I remember not being able to move. I remember losing my voice, physically losing my voice. I could not speak. I remember being in the hallway, wanting to tell my mom, and words would not come out. I couldn't speak. I am so thankful for the gifts, the psychic gifts that I have, because they started at that time. I began to astral travel, and I don't know if anybody knows what astral travel. My spirit would leave my body, so I didn't have to have those memories. And so I'm thankful, so thankful for that. And I remember, and I don't even know if you remember, I remember you were trying to get rid of him, and because he was abusive in other ways. You know, I remember eating hot chili. He made hot chili in the kitchen, and I couldn't eat it. And till this day, I don't like spicy food. And he was forcing me to eat this chili, and I didn't want to eat this damn chili. And I started crying, and he smacked it across the room. And my mom at the time, she got angry at me, but she didn't know any better, you know, and she was just trying to save face with him, and I get that. But I remember leaving. We changed the locks on the apartment, and we were across the other apartment. I remember, this is 8 years old, remembering being across the apartment. It was me, my mom, and my cousin who had come to live with us. And she was a few years older than me. And being terrified, this feeling of like, I didn't understand why. I mean, because I knew that he was bad to me, and I knew that he was bad to her, but still in my 8-year-old little head, I didn't understand, why did we have to hide? Why did we have to be over here? And this was our home. You know, I didn't get that at that time, but it was just, I remember that. And then from there, I became sexually active at 15. Luckily, the boy that I had sex with actually ended up being my daughter's dad later in life, and he was a good guy. He never pressured me. He waited it out. He only, you know, he really didn't want to. It was me pressing that we gotta have sex. You know, we're in love. We're supposed to have sex. I was 15 years old. He was 17. Great guy. Still to this day is a good guy. But I kept pressing the issue, and that was probably one of the reasons why we broke up, is because he felt uncomfortable, because he was a good guy. And so at that time, I began to have sex a lot. 15 years old, that's what love was. And I had older boyfriends, 20-year-old boyfriends. You know, and I became the slut in school, because word gets around in a small town, and we lived in a small town. And I became the slut, and everybody hated me. And I was just trying to find love. I just wanted to be loved. And I thought that's what you're supposed to do. And so then I left to go live with my dad. I remember, hated my stepdad. He never abused me physically, but he was very mean verbally. And we fought round and round, and I never liked him. And I remember I was put in counseling at the age, because I was cutting myself. I have scars, like, this is from when I was 14 years old. I was cutting myself. And I remember the first time my mom saw it was I had come out for some reason to show her, and my whole arm was bloody. And I had just taken my nails and just went. And at the time, I didn't understand why I was doing that. All I knew is that it felt good. It felt so good to have that kind of pain. And so they took me to the counselor. They put me on lithium. They diagnosed me with a bunch of stuff. And I remember, I don't know if you remember, but I went to school and I got in 2 fist fights with friends because I was a slut. And I was losing all my friends. And my stepdad hated me, and I didn't have a connection with my mom. It wasn't until after she left him that we even really hugged. We didn't hug through ever. And I wanted to die. And I remember that's the first time at 14, 15, right around, I wanted to die. I didn't want to be here anymore. And so during that time, my dad got a hold of me. He was on the ship, he was in the Navy still, and he was on the ship, and he started writing me letters and telling me that he loved me and that, he'd always loved me and all this stuff. And my mom, of course, had her opinions, but I was so excited. My dad, finally, after 15 years, my dad, and that's what I wanted. And so he kept telling me, you can come live with me. You can come live with me. And I was like, well, the unknown compared to what I've been through. And he lived in California, and he had just met this woman, or they'd been together, and they were planning on getting married. And she was only 26 at the time, and I was 15. And so my mom, through tears, said, the situation was bad. She, I know, probably wanted to, help my stepdad. It just was an awful situation. And so we had chosen for me to go live with him that summer. And I remember coming home after those fights and saying to my mom, if you do not find me a place to go stay before I go live with my dad, because I'm not going back to school, you will never see me again, because I can't do this. I couldn't take it. And so she put me in a mental institution, I think it was. I was in a mental for a couple weeks, and I was drinking a lot.
It was a nice place, don't
Yeah, it was it was nice. They were
nice
very good to me, very nice, and
sweet.
but I was drinking a lot and stuff, and that's when the first time I heard the word alcoholic. 15 years old, alcoholic. Well, I'm just having fun. I'm just drinking. What's the big deal, right? Yeah, when you're drinking Jack Daniels in the parking lot of the school before you go into school, it's probably not a good idea. So she put me there. I was there for about 2 weeks, and then I went, and she dropped me off the airport. It's the first time I rode on a plane. She told me later that she nearly passed out
No, I passed out.
after because it was very hard.
I don't think I was ever going to see her again.
Yep. I got on that plane, and my story with my dad, he was never abusive to me when I went to go live with him. I remember getting off the plane. We've always, and it's not anything towards my mom, but for some reason my dad and I have always had a very strong
From
connection.
the time she was born.
We've always had such a
No lie.
huge connection. And when I got off that plane, not ever seeing this man in 15 years, or not remembering,
That's
He-
what she was too. Well,
yeah, he hugged me in the airport, and it just went, oh, I felt like we'd always been hugging. I felt like we'd always been in each other's life. Couldn't explain it. And I was so happy to have him in my life. He was in the Navy. He was gone on the ship for 6 months of the time. My stepmom tried her best. We're still friends today, thank God, because I put her through hell. 16 years old and just coming from a basket case. And she had no kids, so she didn't know anything. And then leaving me with her for 6 months at a time. My dad was an alcoholic. He would drink from the moment he got up. He was always drinking.
there was drugs.
Well, when he was in the service, he didn't do drugs, but he did, when I was there, he was drinking a lot, though, a lot, all the time. What I could see, he was drinking. I was with him from the time of 15 and a half to 18. I lived there. And then I tried to kill myself at 16 because I was dating a 24-year-old. Loved him. I dropped out of school to go be with him. Got pregnant at 16. He left. He said he was going to come back and get me. He had to go to Utah or something, I don't know, for work. He was going to come back and get me. So I proceeded to continue to go over to his house where he lived with some old man, and his cousin was there, and he was a guy, and his cousin, and their family's there. So I'd go hang out with them, still not going to school. And, oh, and mind you, the 24-year-old was also a crank addict, so that's the first time I ever dealt with that kind of stuff. He was never abusive, except that he was 24 and I was 16. I got pregnant, he left, then his cousin raped me, and I lost the baby. And then I tried to kill myself, and I was put in another mental institution, and I was there for about a month. And I don't know why these mental institutions are co-ed, because I got in a relationship in a mental institution with a guy. We proceeded to see each other afterwards, and it was not a good relationship, and it ended very quickly, thank God. But so from there, I met a guy who was a year younger than me, and he made me feel safe in the beginning. He was 15, I was 16. This all happened in a very short amount of time. We started dating, and right away he wanted to have sex, and so of course I gave in. And then it was little things. Didn't want me to smoke cigarettes. And I never was a smoker, but I used to like to pretend like I was smoking. And he didn't want me smoking cigarettes, and I thought, oh, he cares about me. It's great, he cares about me, right? It proceeded to, we were at a friend's house. It was 4 of us, and we're all hanging out. And he wanted to have sex, and I didn't want to have sex. I said no for the first time in months that we were together. I said, no, I don't want to have sex right now. Just, I don't want to right now. It just didn't feel right. It was in somebody's house. I didn't want to do that. He turned into a monster. Like nothing I'd ever seen. It was like I was in a movie. He chased me down a cornfield. He strangled me. And I went running, screaming. We were out in the middle of nowhere, running, screaming to my friend's house. They kept me, they barricaded me in this bedroom while he's on the outside screaming and banging on the door trying to get to me, saying he's going to kill me. So they sneak me out, get me in a car and sneak me out and take me home. Dad automatically calls the cops. I didn't want to. He called the cops. Cops come out, take a report. I had bruises all over my neck. Take pictures. They catch him, put him in jail. A few minutes later, his people are on him. He can't come near me. I start sneaking out to see him. No one knew. I started back into the relationship because, he was sorry. I was young. He was sorry. He was wrong. He loved me. No one will love me like he does. That whole spew. And so, again, things were okay for a minute. Then it just was different things. He drugged me at school. During class, we'd fight because I tried to break up with him. We'd fight. He drugged me by my hair along the floor at school. He washed my mouth out with soap one time because I was 18 years old and I said the word fuck. So he drugged me. My dad was in the living room. He drugged me from the room to the bathroom and took a bar of soap and washed, literally. He loved to strangle me. That was the thing, rape. We got married. Never told my mom about it. I kept it from everybody. The teachers at school thought something was going on. They pulled me into the office, tried to get me to say something, and I said nothing. Nope, everything's fine. I wasn't allowed to hang out with my friends. I remember standing in the line. I graduated. I remember standing in line. I finally went back to school and I got it, and I graduated. And I was standing in line looking at all these people in my grade, because he was a year before me, going, I don't know anybody. I didn't go to prom. I didn't experience anything good. It was me and him. He kept it that way. I wasn't allowed to hang out with my friends. I wasn't allowed to do anything and go to school and be with him. I wasn't allowed to cut my hair. I couldn't wear makeup. It's just all these rules. I couldn't go to a rated R movie unless he said it was okay. And during this time, he talked me into, because my dad was an alcoholic and I had issues with that, he talked me into not being around my dad either. And so I cut ties with my dad, and we all lived in this very small town. So for a year, I didn't talk to my dad. He'd come in my grocery store where I worked at, didn't talk to him because I wasn't allowed to. We got married. My mom even asked me, "You sure you want to get married?" I was 20, I think. Yep, I'm sure. Because he told me if I ever left him, he'd kill me. I was terrified. I talked him into joining the Army, which was probably the best thing I ever did. I talked him into joining the Army because at least I got a few months when he was gone to rest. So I didn't have to be yelled at or choked or raped, or I could just take a break. And we were together for 3 years. All my last 3 years of high school. So he joined the Army. We had gotten married. He was going to go to boot camp. Joined the Army. Our wedding night, right after we got married, we went back to our apartment. And downstairs we were having a little reception area afterwards. I wanted to go, change my clothes, and go down. No, he wanted to rape me before we went down there because I said no, I didn't want to right now, but we're husband and wife now. So pulled myself together, went down and celebrated our wedding with everybody else. And then he went to boot camp. I could breathe. For the first time in 3 years, I could breathe. And I could think for myself. I proceeded to be, even though at that point I knew that I didn't want to be with him, I knew that I wasn't happy, I knew that this was wrong, but at that time also, he was also in the church, and I was the Sunday school teacher at church, and he laid that Bible, it was like in the law of the Bible, this is how you're supposed to be treated as a woman, and this is how, this is, you're submissive, you're this, you're that, and God. So I was terrified that I was going to go to hell if I got divorced. Terrified. And I didn't want to disappoint God. So I remember being at the apartment by myself, and the woman, I always have these older women, and maybe it was a mother surrogate, I don't know, but throughout my life they would show up at the right times and be like, "Here, let me take you under my wing." Well, this woman, she was spunky. I loved her. She's short hair. She was just, and she's about my mom's. She's spunky. She ran the apartment building, and I never really talked to her while my ex was there until he left. And so I started hanging out with her and talking to her, and I slowly but surely started trusting her and telling her things. And I told her, she's like, "Well, why don't you just leave him? He's abusive, this and that." And I said, "Well, I don't want to, divorce him." She says, "Woman, I have been divorced 3 times. I'm fine. You'll be fine." She kind of gave me a backbone. And he was gone, so it was, easier to do that. So I kept up the facade. I wrote his letters. I answered his phone calls. I made sure he made it through boot camp. I was the supportive wife. I made sure, because there's so many times, "Oh, I'm going to come home." No. I'm a last-minute person. I wait to the very last minute. So I waited till all my stuff was packed, shipped to Kentucky where we were supposed to go live together, till I decided I was not going to go. So I'm on a bus ride, and I don't want to leave it. I want closure, and a lot of times I like to face it. So I had to face him. So he was graduating boot camp. I was on a bus going to go see him at boot camp, and the plan was he was going to graduate boot camp, and we were going to go to move to Kentucky. But for some reason, I knew if I left and went to Kentucky, I wouldn't be alive. I knew it. Every inch of me knew it. So on that bus ride from California to Kentucky, I called everybody. "Getting divorced! It's done!" And I told everybody about what happened. And at that time, I'd already let go of my apartment. All my stuff was gone. I had just suitcases. I had nowhere to go. I hadn't talked to my dad in a year. My mom and my stepdad were actually going to meet us there at the boot camp place.
But mind you, she didn't tell us anything.
Didn't tell nothing.
Nothing.
But I faced it. I got off the bus, and right away he knew something was off, and I told him, I said, and I felt safe because we were on the base for some reason, and I said, "We're getting a divorce, and I'm not going with you. I can't do this anymore." And he cried, the whole thing, and I said, "No, I'm not going to do this anymore. I don't know what I'm doing, where I'm going, but I'm not doing this anymore." And so I was 20 years old. And I got back on the bus, went back. my mom said, you want to come, you can come, but I didn't want to deal with my stepdad, come to Michigan. I was like, no, California's where I want to be. And I called my dad. After a year of not talking to him, he met me at the bus station at 3 o'clock in the morning, picked my butt up, and took me home. And so from there, I proceeded to have relationship after relationship, be more promiscuous, and just, you know, not thinking anything of myself, such low self-esteem, hated myself, still would cut myself, didn't want to be here, didn't know what to do or how not to do it. And then when I was 18, I went off of all my meds because I didn't like to be controlled. And so I moved to Las Vegas on a whim, because that's what I used to do. I'm going to go visit a friend in Las Vegas for a weekend. I just won't come back. And so I moved to Las Vegas, met my son's dad, and he was more verbally, emotionally abusive, neglectful. He hit me 2 times. Once I was holding my son. He was about a year old. I was holding him in my arms, and he started, and his thing was he liked to hit me in my head because you can't see bruises. So he'd beat crap out of my head. And he told me, can't see bruises, so no one will ever know. And but I was holding my son, and we're just like, just don't hit the baby, just stop. And I thought, also at the time, I thought, if I'm holding my baby, he'll stop, right? No, he didn't stop. So I left, got on the bus, went to my stepmom, who at that time had already left my dad, because my dad got out of the service and got back into drugs, and I hadn't talked to my dad in a while, but I was still talking to my stepmom. She had happened to have a baby, my brother, who's 4 months older than my son, and she always opened her home to me, no matter what, and I put that woman through hell. And but I went out there, and she says, you can stay here as long as you need to. You and Elijah. Elijah was probably about 2 years old. We got on a bus to go out there from California, or Las Vegas, California. No, backtrack. I was pregnant when I left him the first time. And I felt like I couldn't do it because I was pregnant. And got in my head that I didn't want my baby to grow up without their dad.
Don't know where she got that.
I don't know where I got that from. So I came back, and it was the same, as long as I mind my P's and Q's, everything was good, did my wifely duties, did all those things. Then I left again when he beat me in my head, and I remember we lived in bad neighborhoods. We lived in a very bad neighborhood in Las Vegas. And Las Vegas on the Strip is very pretty. You go off that strip, it's not. And I lived there for 5 years. And I remember after he did that to me, I grabbed Elijah out of the crib. It was about midnight. I grabbed him out of the crib, barefoot, and took off in the middle of the night on the roads of Las Vegas to I don't know where, because I didn't have any friends. And I was holding my baby. I hopped on a bus, and I just didn't know where to go. And that's when I called my stepmom and said, I don't know what to do. And she said, come here. So I did. Talked to his dad on the phone, convinced me to come back home. I came back home. That's when I started learning about emotional abuse, mental abuse. I didn't think it was a thing up till that point. I didn't realize how emotionally, mentally abused that I was being. I started researching, started learning, started educating myself on this. I took it as like this was school. I'm going to learn everything I can about this because it made sense. I'm like, oh, this is okay. Because he could go out all night long, but I had to stay home with the baby. He didn't want to babysit his son. He didn't want to, he didn't want to do anything with his son. He's like, I'll do with that later when he gets older. I'm like, so the last time and he was alcoholic. He had gotten a DUI. He used to drive drunk all the time. We would fight constantly about it, and drive drunk with me and his son all the time. We went up north, and first time going up north together, and Elijah was about 2, and we were talking at the campsite about having another baby, because of course that fixes things. And on our way back, he got a DUI. And thank God for that, because that's what started the spiral for me to leave him. Because after that, he lost his license, and I had to quit my job to drive him back and forth to work. And then I ended up working for him, laying base in houses and putting doors in. And it just spiraled. And while he was in his program to get his license back, AA and all this stuff, he was great. He loved being with me. It was like, oh my God, I never had this before. This is wonderful. He treated me like gold. Of course he did, because I was his, his chauffeur. I remember he got his license back, and I was terrified. I did not want him to get his license back, because I thought, that's it. It's done. Yeah. And it was. It was over. And he would flirt with other women in front of me, and then, I'd get mad, and I was in the wrong, and it just... So the last time, Elijah was about 3 years old. He was laying on the couch. We had this little trailer. He was laying on a couch here, and me and his dad were over here, and we would fight all the time. We were screaming and yelling. He was on one side, I was on one side. He got up, came around, and started to beat the shit out of my head again. I'm going to kill you, blah, blah, blah. And what scared me the most was that he was sober when he did this. And that was the first time. And Elijah was sleeping 5 feet away from us. And I went, so I went to go sit with my son, again thinking, well, maybe he'll stop, which he did. But I sat next to my son to make sure he was still sleeping, because I didn't want him to wake up. And so I was just like begging him, pleading, please just stop. Very whisper, just stop. And he kept coming at me like this. He took off. That next morning, right before that happened, a friend of mine from high school had gotten a hold of me from Michigan, and she said, you need to come here. You and Elijah come here and sleep on my couch, and we'll figure it out, but you gotta come. No, it's fine. And then that happened. So I remember that, and I called my mom, and my boss at work, which was another female figure, which I'm still friends with on Facebook. She's awesome. They all helped me escape again. And this time, I was nice to him, but I was strong, and I said, I'm just going to go spend time with my mom. Vacation. We're just going to take a break. Because at this time, we had gotten married. We were together for 4 years, then got married. And so I said, me and Elijah, we're just going to go. And so we got on a bus. It was in January. We lived in Vegas this whole time. No coats, no nothing. We get on this bus, all knowing that I wasn't going back. He gave me money. We talked the whole time on the phone. He was super nice. I got off the bus. My mom picked me up, took me over to my friend's house, and after a little bit, he discovered that I wasn't coming home, and that's when it all went haywire. The judge let him come back to take my son from me, emergency court order, from Michigan. He's 3 years old, never been away from me. Take him back to Vegas for 3 months while we waited trial. Luckily, at this time, because my ex was trying to keep me in Vegas and keep my son. He didn't want me to be here. So I got a lawyer in Las Vegas over the phone. But luckily, during this time, I had met my daughter's dad again, my high school sweetheart. And he was still a good guy. He moved me and Elijah into his mom's house where he was living. She was good, good to us, and moved us in there. And it was the first time I was ever treated in my entire life for someone who cared, genuinely cared. Gave me a vehicle to drive with no strings attached. I always kept waiting for that other shoe to drop. Like, what do you want from this? No, never pressure on anything. Helped me, took my son in like it was his own. He never had any kids. His whole family took my son in like it was their own. And he helped me get through that divorce, because I panic attacks, breakdowns. My son was gone. I didn't know if I was going to get him back. I was like, And my ex would still scream at me on the phone. Scream bloody murder. And then I remember somebody telling me one time, you know you don't have to let him do that to you anymore. You're not in this relationship with him yet. You don't have to. You teach people how to treat you. If you continue to let him do that, and I had to learn to put up boundaries. So I would hang up on him when he'd scream at me until he finally calmed down and then would talk to me. Well, then went to court, had a nervous breakdown, had to fly out to Vegas, got my son, got everything I wanted, got child support, got everything. He got visitation rights, that type of thing, for the summers, that type of thing. Brought my son home. Because that's all I cared about. I was the same way. I didn't want child support, I didn't want nothing, but they gave it to me. So from there, I was with my daughter's dad for about 4 years. We got pregnant pretty quickly after we got married. Good guy. The moment I gave birth to my daughter, all the memories of the molestation at 8 years old came flashing back. Boom, 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 boom. Everything just hit me like a ton of bricks. I had this little girl and everything just went. And triggers were enormous at that time. Smells. Beards. The guy had a beard. Until this day, I do not like beards. My daughter's dad had a beard. It was so hard for me. Everything, So, we ended up getting divorced and sharing custody for a little bit. He still took my son with him, which was fantastic. I signed custody of my daughter over to him at that time, thinking it was the best thing for her because I was in no state to raise a girl. You know, my son was already moving around with me, boyfriend after boyfriend. So, I ended up, let's pause for a minute. In the beginning was one of the nicest guys that I had met. He still is a nice guy. Luckily we get along, and I gave custody to him of my daughter. It's been that way. She's 14 years old now because I knew she'd be safe. That's what I wanted. I wanted her to be safe. I was still bouncing around. I was still living on people's couches with my son, and I was still having boyfriend after boyfriend, and I knew, at least in my head, that I didn't want her around that, and her dad was very stable. That's where I wanted her to be, was safe. So I was willing to give up my time with her and have her every other weekend to make sure she was safe. I have been married 8 times, legally married 8 times, divorced 7.
But this is the last.
This is the last. Of course, yeah, it's interesting because 8 years old was when I had the rape and molestation, 7 divorces, and 8's the number. So, but so I had gotten married to a guy who was, he was an asshole, okay? He was an asshole. He wasn't per se abusive, but sexually wise, it was abusive. It was rough, and it just was not, and he kept trying to convince me that it was my thing, and I'm like, no, this is not my thing, but it was just like a forceful type of thing, like the dominatrix type of stuff, and I'm just like, this is not me, and like literally he hit me one time and like punched me in my face during it. I'm like, he's like, oh, it's part of it. I'm like, this is not okay. Well, I remember I would get my daughter on the weekends, and my daughter, and she was never alone with him, because I just didn't let that happen with anybody. So, she had to have been, how old was she? She was maybe 6 or 7, something around there. Me and my daughter have always been close, even though she lives with her dad, but we've always had a strong bond. Even today, we have a strong bond. She didn't want to come over anymore. She stopped wanting to come over, and she just wouldn't tell me why. She just said, I don't want to come over. I don't want to. And she was telling her dad, and her dad would listen to his daughter. Thank God, because I was upset, not thinking clearly. Her dad put his foot down and said, no, she's not coming over. She's not comfortable. She's not coming over. And so I didn't know why, what her reasoning was. I think she had a feeling about it, and I left him. I divorced him after 6 months. I said, nope, if my daughter's going to be this uncomfortable, I'm not going to stay with this person. There's something not right, and if something's not right. So I left, got into another relationship. We were together for 3 years, severely abusive, choking me. The last time one time he threw me out of the house. It was in the middle of the winter. He was pissed off at me, threw me out of the house. I was barefoot, just a robe on, in the middle of winter. I had to sit in my car out front of the house because he wouldn't let me back in the house. Gone after me with a knife. One time he told me, you should just kill yourself, and I tried. I slit my wrist. He rushed me to the hospital. That was the last time I ever tried to kill myself, because at that time I went, who's going to take care of my kids? And I was all my son had. And so they stitched me up 19 stitches later. We lied about the story. He's the one that, why don't you just kill yourself, and handed me the knife. So I said, okay. And then I made a decision then that I wasn't going to kill myself, but I still proceeded to stay with him for another 2 years. And he was very controlling. He wouldn't work. He wouldn't help out around the house. He was very flirtatious with women on Facebook. And very sexually aggressive. More than just... And I remember the last time, luckily my son wasn't there, because my son and I have taught, he's 20 years old now. We just talked about this the other day, and it kind of took my breath away. I said something about abuse and what we were going to be doing, and he says, well, I was abused. And I went, I never thought about it. It was the first time my 20-year-old son said, I was abused, and I went, what are you talking about? Because I really thought I did a good job. My ex at the time, he reminded me, he picked him up, got in an argument, picked him up by his throat and threw him up against a wall, and he held on to that. And I got quiet. And this was just recently, just in the last couple weeks. And then I said, well, I'm sorry. You need to know that maybe you don't remember this, but I remember now that you tell me that incident, and I got in between you two, and I got it worse later. And that's what started the trickle of effect. Well, during this time, I hadn't talked to my dad in years. And I also had cousins that I was really close to. One of them was Josh. Absolutely loved him, but he was a heroin addict. I had a couple cousins like that. And there's 2 times towards the end of the relationship that kind of, you would think, guys tried to kill you, you would think that would be enough. It wasn't. 3 things happened that set the motion for me leaving. Number 1, my dad came back into my life after years of not talking and was really trying to make an effort, and I kept pushing him away because my ex was jealous of my dad and my relationship. And so I couldn't talk to my dad. He kept going, remember what he did to you? Remember how he's an alcoholic? Remember this? Remember that? And I'm just like, but he's my dad. And he's trying. He was really trying. Number 2, my cousin Josh had come to town. He lived somewhere else. He'd come to town, and I hadn't seen him in years. Called me on the phone and begged me to come see him. Begged me to come visit him in Flint, and my ex would not have it, because there's no way I was going to go have a relationship with another man, regardless if it was a relative or not. My cousin ended up overdosing and dying, so I never got to see him. The third thing is that my car had broke down. My ex had took it to vehicle place down the street, and he came back. He says, well, I need this and such money, and we were on such a tight budget because I was the only one working. So he says, I need this $50, I think it was. And I said, well, we're not going to pay the guy if he's not going to do the job. And he's like, he flipped a lid. And this is a guy that would push me from behind. He would come up from behind, throw me up against the wall, scream in my face like this. If I was late 2 minutes coming from work, I must have screwed everybody on the way home. And he proceeded to choke me, and I knew that was it. I was passing out. I was going to die. And all over $50. And I was begging and grasping, gasping for air, and just trying to plead. And it clicked in my head. I'm like, I started apologizing to him. I'm sorry. As much as I could get out. I'm so sorry. You're right. I'm wrong. You're right. I'm wrong. I'm so sorry. Please. I'm so sorry. He let go, and he took off with the money. I, again, barefoot, took off. I don't remember. I think my son was staying somewhere at the time, but I took off. He was about 13, 14. I took off to a friend's house, got in a vehicle. They took me to another friend's house. This lady tried to convince me to leave him, and I was still, I don't know if I should leave him. What do I. Mind you, at this whole time, I didn't think I could survive on my own when I was the only one working for 3 years. But he had me so wrapped up in my head that I didn't know any better. Well, then I went back shortly, temporarily. Then I finally got the courage to ask him to leave. He left, still the whole time wanting to be back together, still trying to control me. At this time, I get a phone call from my sister. I have a sister and brother in California from my dad's side, which we don't really talk very often. We don't have anything against each other. We just don't talk. She's younger. They grew up in California. I get a phone call from her, and I knew she's never called me. My dad was in the hospital with a quadruple bypass surgery, and they didn't know if he was going to make it. So I mustered up every money, everybody donated, and I flew out to see my dad because I had a feeling that if I didn't, this was going to be it. And at this point, we still had some making up to do. And so I was there in the hospital room. He couldn't talk, but he mouthed, I love you. And he always, I love you, sweetheart. He kissed me and he hugged me, and I just was like, every anger, all the excuses I used over the years because I didn't have a dad, that this is why I did this, or all this thing, it just was gone. I'm like, oh no, it's gone now. Everything was forgiven. And I was so grateful because my brother hadn't known my dad either for the first 15 years, and I was in the room when they met for the first, pretty much, and that was just beautiful. And I kind of convinced him, I said, you're going to want to do this because you don't want any regrets. So I forgave him, had a great time, did a lot of Reiki on him. I left, came back. But during that time, my brother and I connected. We had he was a lot like my dad, and everybody was worried he was an alcoholic, he was going to go down the wrong road. Well, we had connected, and he was taking me to the beach, and I remember my ex calling me and being angry at me because I was having fun. Screaming at me because I was going to the beach. And I'm like, it's been a week, we're tired, we're going to take a break, and we're going to go to the beach for a day. But no, I was such a bad person and screaming and yelling at me. And he said to me, and at this time I was going, should I go back, should I stay, should I go back, should I stay? He says to me, I've been watching porn behind your back for the last 6 months. And that's the one thing I don't. Beat me, hit me, don't lie to me. And it broke the camel's back, apparently, because I came back and I filed for divorce and I never looked back. And I just kept moving forward. And then after that, because I don't learn my lesson, I meet a guy, because here I am, single. My vehicle breaks down. I'm terrified because I have to work. And at this time I was doing readings and I was cleaning people's houses and stuff. And so I met this guy who's older than me. He got me a car. Thought he was great. Wasn't really my type, but he, a few years old, I ended up falling for him.
And he was narcissist, sociopath to a T. It was never physical, except for one time he threw me up against the wall because I threatened to take his picture. He was trying to get my phone from me because he didn't want pictures of him. Mind game after mind game. He made me sit for hours at the computer watching exorcism, saying that devil was in me. It was just exhausting. He made me work like a dog. He treated me worse than the dogs, but I loved him, and I stayed for a year. I went through this. My son was 16 at the time. He went to go live with my daughter's dad because I was so screwed up in my head. I knew I didn't want him around, and Elijah, my son, didn't like the guy. My daughter didn't come over anymore. I lost everything. He took everything. Like, I had no job. Because mysteriously, I was a certified nurse assistant for 10 years. I was good at my job. I loved my job. I never had gotten fired. But mysteriously, within this year that we were together, I got fired 3 times. Out of the blue. He took everything. He took control of everything. And I don't know. I was tired at that point. I guess this is the good as I was going to get. You know, maybe I deserved this. I didn't know. I was just like, at least he doesn't beat me. We lived together, and he wasn't public with me. Like, no one knew we were dating, but we lived together.
I wasn't even allowed to see her.
I left 3 times. The first time I left, I went to go live with my mom. And he burned all my books. He burned my tarot cards. He took everything from me that I loved. And when I got with my mom, when I was living with my mom, I started doing tarot again. I was like, I'm not ever giving this up because it's the one thing in saving grace that's going to save me, if anything. And he played the game as, oh, you could do whatever you want. You could do tarot. Absolutely. I'll support you 100. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And it was the first time he ever said he loved me. So I went, oh, after a year of bending over backwards for this man, doing his dishes and cleaning, just everything for this man, and he finally said he loved me. I went back. A few more months went by, and then that's when he started getting rough with me. And then I left again to go live with another friend. And at that time he would come pick me up and like court, be a gentleman. And he told me he wanted to marry me. He was willing to go to counseling. He was all these stuff. So I was like, what the heck? Wow, this is fantastic, right? So I went back. Within a couple weeks, same thing. And his was the opposite with sex. He wouldn't have sex with me. He would punish me with it. He would take his affection away from me if I misbehaved, if I said something he didn't like. He would take it all back from me. So if I was a good girl and did everything he wanted me to do, literally carrying wood in the house, like back break. I threw my back out twice that year because of everything. He controlled he fed me. He wouldn't let me eat. He wanted me to lose weight. I was, only a few pounds heavier than I am now. He wanted me to lose weight. He wouldn't feed me. I was eating food, like if I was allowed to go to the grocery store without him, I would stuff my face because I was so hungry. I was saving cans so I could have money. During that year, so many times, because we lived on a busy road, I looked at that road and went, all I got to do is step out in front of that car and it'll all be done. I don't have to deal with this anymore. Why can't this guy just love me like he said that he does? What's wrong with me? I've done everything. Everything. And then the third time, my friend had, my best friend, I love her to death. She saved my life. She says, I was on, because he wouldn't let me talk to my best friend. He would like, there's this trailer. When I first moved into, for the first 6 months I wasn't allowed in his house.
when he moved a small trailer into his yard and I could live there, when I threatened to leave and go live at my friend's house the first time. So he moved a trailer there, which is tiny travel trailer. So I lived in that, and then it was starting to get cold. And then my dad died during this time. My dad got better. And then we talked on the phone every day, and I was supposed to come back out, and we were going to go for a walk together, and it was the last phone call was, "I love you, sweetheart, I'll talk to you soon." And I was so wrapped up with this sociopath narcissist that I kept putting my dad on the back burner. I'll call him later. Then my sister called again, and he just never woke up. And I wanted so bad to go out there to be with my sister and my brother and my stepmom and go through that. My poor sister, who's younger than me, had to do everything, and I felt so horrible. But he wouldn't let me go. I couldn't go. I had no money. So my dad died, and I remember being in this little tiny travel trailer, and my son was at my daughter's dad, and this guy lived in this trailer, and I remember just being heartbroken and just wanting someone to talk to. And I remember going to knock on the door and just beg him, "Can you just talk to me? Because my dad just died, and I need someone." And he wouldn't. "Get over it. You'll be fine. Go back to your trailer." So I had to stuff all of it. So when I threatened to move, when I moved with my mom, he moved me into the house the next time. But this time, because the trailer's one of those old trailers like this, you got a bedroom here, kitchen, living room, a little hallway, and you've got the laundry room, bathroom, and a back bedroom. Well, when he moved me into there, he moved me into the back bedroom. No stairs, boarded up the window, don't know why. The sink, the toilet didn't work. We had no hot water. I had to use a hose to clean with. And he would screw the door shut to his side of the house and wouldn't let me on that side of the house. Only when he said it was okay. And I could only eat when he gave me dinner, and he could only cook it. And I had a phone, and he had a phone, and I could only talk to him if I wanted to talk to him through an intercom on the phone. And then he would leave, thinking he would leave, and I would call my friend and be like, "This is just not right, something's not right," but not wanting to leave. Come to find out later, he would pretend like he was leaving, come back and listen to the conversations. Because he would bring up things that I said to my friend. And I'm like, "You weren't even here." But he would listen. So the third time I left, my friend finally convinced me. I said, "I don't have a job, I don't have nothing." She says, "Just come here. You can watch my son for daycare and while I work, and you could we'll figure it out. Just come here." I've known her since I was 14 years old. She's like, "Just come here." Moved me out. He went berserk, frantic. Of course, "So sorry, don't leave me," and all this stuff. At this time, he had started some bogus business. He's a con man. He started some bogus business painting people's houses. And so, because he knew I didn't have a job, and I wasn't quite ready to let him go yet, but I didn't want to be there. And he needed to know what was going on with me at all times. He hired me to go paint. Okay, fine. Paid me good money to sit there to do nothing because he wouldn't allow me to paint while I was there. I figured out after a while, I was with him all day, all morning, all night. Then dropped me off, and I was too tired to do anything. That's why. So I started counseling. I went to counseling, and I was telling this guy about this guy. And this guy actually, a lot of people know this guy. And he doesn't have a good track record, and he's been arrested. And this counselor said, "You need to cut ties with this guy now because this guy's dangerous." He told me some things about the guy that I didn't know. I said, "I'm scared. I'm afraid." Because the lights and electricity were still in my name. And I was afraid to take it out of my name because I didn't know what he'd do because he had already threatened. He would kill anybody that took me away from him. So I kept my mom, my friends, everybody at this to protect them because I thought I was protecting them. And so the counselor convinced me to call and shut the service off. So I did. And he called me and he was very upset about it and begging me, and then he got mean, and then after that, within a couple days, my food stamps got cut off mysteriously. And I called my caseworker because we were good for, we knew each other. She'd been working with me for a while. She said, I don't know what happened. The only way it could have happened is if someone would have got online with your account information, and he knew everything. Everything. He had all my information and shut it off that way. And he had threatened. He had called and pretended to be me at the counselor's office and canceled my appointments on me. I would get there, and they'd be like, you called and canceled. I said, no, I didn't. And they treated me like I was crazy. And so when that happened, I went straight to the police station, and I got a PP order on him, and it was on there for a year. And I've run into him since. We've run into each other because it's a small town, small area. He still lives here. I ran into him. And you think that I would be happy that I was free of that? What was upsetting the most was that he never once held my hand in public. He never once made it public about me. Never once. One time I dyed my hair, he wanted me to have dark hair. So he made me dye my hair brown. I dyed it back to pink and stuff like this. He forced me into the bathroom and re-dyed my hair. He wanted me to dress my age modestly. He wanted me, certain ways. But he didn't want anybody to know that we were together in a relationship. His kids were older; they weren't dumb. But what upset me the most at the end of all that was, after when I finally broke it off and he got the PP order on him. Mysteriously, he was with some new woman, holding her hand in public, taking her to his grandson's baseball games and all this stuff. And I was like, what was wrong with me? What was wrong with me? So, at that point, I said, something's got to give here. Because I'm going to end up dead. Or I'm like, I can't live like this anymore. And I had a 16-year-old son. And luckily, he's turned out so great. He's such a good kid. And I had a 14-year-old daughter. I'm like, what am I, I think she was, 12 at the time. I'm like, what am I doing?
No, she was younger than that.
Yeah. But I'm like, what am I doing with my life? So I took a year off of relationships after that one. And I'm telling you, I dealt with post-traumatic stress disorder. The first time I had a date with someone, number one, I made sure that everybody knew who this guy was to make sure my first date out. I'm like, I had to make sure he was safe because I was terrified of men. I was terrified. This guy, even though he wasn't physically, he was so emotionally, mentally abusive. I was terrified. And so
She doesn't know it. He was just like her father.
So I remember my friend set me up a date with her brother. I'm like, are you sure he's safe? I ended up talking to him on the phone for a long time. He came and got me for a date, and we were going back to his house just to watch movies. And I had a full-blown panic attack in the car on the way there, and I freaked out. Get me out of this car. I can't breathe. Oh my God, I freaked out. He had to pull over. He was like, what's wrong with you? Luckily, he was a nice guy, and he understood. It was awful. And so I just decided I'm not going to date anybody. So I took a year off of relationships, and I built myself. I was severely codependent. I was severely hated myself. I didn't know who I was, what I liked, what I didn't like. My goal at that point was to get my son back because he was living at my daughter's dad. And I wanted my family, and he was my family. And I wanted to be better for her, my daughter. I wanted to give her a better role model because I knew if I didn't, the cycle would continue. And I didn't want to do that. So I took a year off, and I met my husband. And he's probably the nicest guy I've ever met in my entire life. And the first year of our marriage, I put that guy through hell. because I was going, pushing buttons, seeing if he would hit me, doing things on purpose. That's stupid. I mean, really? Isn't that funny what we do? Let's see how far we can push him. Maybe, and if he hits me, then aha! Then I can leave.
Yep.
Then I'll just leave. And, you know, but he stayed in. The poor guy, he stuck in. He never, he would lose his temper. He'd yell, but he would walk away. He never laid a hand on me. Even one time, because sometimes, and I'm not saying this is right at all, but sometimes as victims, warriors, but sometimes we're in that victim mentality, we lash out before they can lash out at us. I learned to fight. I learned to hit a grown man. And one time my husband was drinking, and we talk about this, and I've apologized, and we worked through it, but one time he was drinking, and he got a little bit mean, just a little bit, but it was enough to trigger me. And he wasn't even being mean. He was just being a jerk, like guys can be sometimes. And he said the wrong thing, and I got up and walked like this, and walked to go walk past him to the room, and I punched him in the face as hard as I could. Boom! And I kept walking going, oh my God!
What did I do?
He didn't do nothing. My husband did nothing. He just went, and we didn't talk about it till later. And then I realized, if I don't get this under control, I'm going to become an abuser. And I can't do that. So I was willing to leave him before it got to any further. And we talked, and it took us a long time. We've been together almost 5 years, actually 4 years. In August will be our 4-year anniversary. And we've gone through so much this last 4 years. And the things, I mean, I pushed that man's buttons up and down, and anybody else would have left, but he stuck in there. And he told me at one time, he says, Crystal, you're safe. I'm not going anywhere, and neither are you. So we're going to have to figure this out. And he says, and the one thing I could say about him is that I have always felt safe with him, and I've never felt safe in my entire life with any man. And he is the one person I have always felt safe with. And what I gauged it on was how he was with his kids. His kids love him. And how he was with my kids. And my kids love him. And I'm like, I'm stuck now. And he's not perfect, but he's great. And when I had the stroke and the brain bleed and all this stuff, the first year of our relationship, I had a hysterectomy, and then this. I told him recently, I said, I am so glad you are the one that this has happened with, because anybody else, I wouldn't be where I am. And he's always accepted my beliefs. He's always accepted my choices for career, and lets me decorate the house any way I want. He's just a great guy. And I know now how I got him was because I began to love myself first. And I decided that I was not going to settle anymore. I was not going to. At all. And I remember the first night we got together, I said, this is my story. And I told him. And I said, we were just hanging out. And I said, and this is what I won't put up with. And this is da-da-da-da-da. And I named off all, and I'm like, any other guy would just be like, this girl's nuts. But he's just like, I think I'm going to marry you. I'm like, but I just stood up for myself. And I just knew after that nobody would ever treat me that way again. Ever. I'll stay single. I don't care. But I like being married. I like being in a relationship. And I knew I was going to get it right. And I did this time. We're not perfect, but it's good. It's good. And when we talk about forgiveness, the guy who tried to kill me 3 times, the one that threw me out in the snow and all that good stuff, we're friends now. And I have completely forgiven him. And he brings his new daughter over. She's 2 years old. She's a doll. She's beautiful. And I love her. And he gets along with my husband. My husband gets along with anybody. He doesn't hold ill towards nobody. And that happened because when I decided to do readings for people to help other women and other people heal full time, my spirit guide said, you're going to have to forgive everybody. And I thought I already have. No, you got to go through your list again, and you have to forgive, because you can't do this line of work, we want you and what you need to be doing, if you don't. He was the last one. And we sat face to face, and he cried, and I could tell that time, after, it's been 5 years, that time I knew he was genuine. And now we're friends, and we get along, and it's great. He comes over and brings his kid, and it's just great. And he's different, and I'm different, but we know that, he's even agreed to sit down like this, me and him, and talk about this, because he has his own abuse story and why he was the way he was. Not excusing it. He's never excused it.
Right.
But he's willing to sit down and do that. And that to me shows a lot. And it's not that we're, he's happy that I'm happy with Jim, and that, he's happy for me, but I'm just, and we don't have to be in each other's life. I don't have to have him in my life to forgive him. You never have to have anybody in your life to forgive your abuser.
You can write him a letter.
You can write him a letter, you can do whatever. I've done that. But for some reason, this is the way it's supposed to be. And I think a lot of it's to do is that he's allowing me to school his daughter in cards and healings, and me and her have a connection. He's just the middleman. But, and I could say today, now, that I hold no ill will to the man who raped and molested me at 8 years old. I forgave him. I forgave him for me, because I couldn't carry that with me anymore. Couldn't do it. Was it right? Absolutely not. I mourned the loss of who Crystal would have been before that, because at that age, we all know, that changes you. It changes our minds.
But you're better for it.
Absolutely. I'm way better for it. And now,
To grieve.
I grieve.
Go through a grieving process.
Yes, absolutely.
Because you think to yourself at some point, as a young person or an adult, what would I have been? Like, maybe I would have been more loving, or I would be more trusting, or and not a career, but the things that you hold as values and morals. Those are what you grieve for. And maybe I wouldn't be suicidal.
Right.
Maybe I wouldn't have this darkness about me. Maybe I would enjoy what I see other people when they have peace and joy in their life. And you find that it's a real process of grieving who you thought you would have been.
Yep.
And once you can get past that, or not even past that, but go through the stages of grieving and realize that you are someone and may not have been the person that you thought you should have been, but it's someone, like you said, someone who's much better.
Yeah.
You become at your own peace.
Yeah.
A peace that you didn't even know you needed or that existed.
Absolutely.
And I can't even say how grateful and thankful I get when I start to reflect on those sort of things.
Absolutely. It's made me a strong person. I have always, and when I was younger, it was always pointing the finger. It's her fault. That fault. That's the reason. But as an adult, I realized that I had to take control of that. I had a choice. I could have made this choice or not this choice. I had a choice to make. And I can say that I was very neglectful to my son, raising him, because I was always putting him aside for men. And he knows that, and we've talked about that. We have a very close relationship now, which is great. I can say I neglected my daughter as well. I can say that my husband's 2 kids made me a mother, because I raised them for 4 years when I first came into the picture. and they gave me the chance to be a mom.
And now she's a great,
Now, I'm a mom.
she's a real.
I'm the mom that I always wanted to be. But I had to go through all that to get here. And now, I help other people heal by my story and by my experience. And I know for a fact, though, that I don't like to be controlled. So there's no way in hell that I'm not going to forgive you because you're not going to control me. And I have told my husband, I've adopted a saying, I have forgiven you before you've even done it because you're not controlling me. It's not going to happen. And from that, I got my freedom. And I know that I'm a stronger person today than I ever was. And I'm thankful for every experience.
Every step of the way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's my story.
Things happen for a reason.
Absolutely.
We have, everything in our life, it happens for a reason. We don't know what those reasons are. And we don't like them most of the time. Well, I shouldn't say most of the time. A lot of the time. Because there are times.
We hate them.
But there are times when, not all, your life isn't all bad. I mean, there are
No.
moments, at least, when you have a decent moment or two. But things happen for a reason, and it's what we do with that.
Oh, no, it's okay.
Whether or not we just let it overcome us, or we become stronger and grow from it.
Absolutely.
And it takes time. It just takes time. I mean, it really does take time. And until you're ready yourself, it won't happen.
I agree.
But when it happens, it's such a relief and such a weight off you, and your whole life will change. It really will.
She's got to go.
Yeah.
So we're going to, I want to get a picture real quick before she does leave. So let's, when we do our spew, you want to talk about the thing real
I can
quick?
do that if she wants to pause it. Then
Okay,
I can
pause
do that,
that
right
and
after.
we'll talk.
Go.
Okay. Hi, I'm Crystal LaFay.
And I'm Heather.
I want to give the opportunity for other women. So if you feel the need, you need a voice, and you want to share your story, please get a hold of one of us. And I'm sure you'll put the links and
Yep,
all that
we
good
can put the
stuff.
links up.
Yep. And we want to hear your story. We want to help you share your story and help you become empowered in your own life. So, and we hope that this has helped you with your own healing. And if you just need to talk to someone,
Got good platforms.
yeah, and if you're not ready to leave the relationship, but you still need to talk to someone, get a hold of us. We definitely will be there and listen and give you some resources or things that you need. That's what we're here for.
And another thing too with the stories that were talked about today, I know one of the things that was a hard thing that kind of hit was when you go to leave the relationship that you're in and you have an animal that's hard to leave behind.
Yes.
Corky's dream is starting to take donations to build the animal shelter and a women's shelter together. And we're kind of coincide with that with Survivor Girl Podcast and Survive to Thrive. So if you are needing help to move forward, or if you're interested in the organization, please give us, contact us, send us a message. You can find me or Becky on Survivor Girl Podcast. Shoot us an inbox message, and we can help get you in the right direction.
Absolutely. There's always a way out, and we're here to support that. So you're not alone. You are absolutely not alone. We've all gone through it, and we will continue to help as much as we can.
As long as we have our voice, we'll continue moving forward.
Yep. We will not be silenced no longer, because we are not victims. We are warriors.
And so are you.
Have a beautiful day.